Guys, have you ever felt that your self-worth was tied to what other people thought of you?
I don't know how you would not be self-conscious.
Right.
Just constantly seeing other people who are better than you by society's version.
And doesn't it seem like it's always something every day that just brings you down?
You just have to look at things not as why am I going through this, but what can I learn from this?
Do you come from a family with issues that affect you even now?
I come from a family of alcoholics, and, even at a very young age, I recognized that people were using bad things that happened as an excuse to drink.
Today's guest is my friend Denise. She's dealt with emotional trauma,
I am super open about my mental health.
several mental health issues, betrayal, foreclosure, poverty, and a bunch of other hardships.
One of the things that you can do to help somebody more than anything is to show them that they're not alone.
Denise has also built a rewarding life as a rock star real estate agent as a result of all of her setbacks. She's going to give you a 5-minute plan to feel better about yourself, deal with stressful moments like a boss, and live a life that makes you happy. The Dirty Truth with Deante Young starts now.
It's a dirty truth with Deante Young. Hit the main course, get the entree done. Pull up on the gang, all the fly day ones. Tune in, come and see what Deante done. It's a dirty truth with Deante Young. Hit the main course, get the entree done. Pull up on the gang, all the fly day ones. Tune in, come and see what Deante done. Like, just vibe with it.
I have, to me, one of the most amazing people that I've met in history. The history of all beings. Seriously. Like, I'm one of those people that when it comes to people, I'm a people person when they are like extra awesome as a person. This is my wonderful, wonderfully talented friend, Denise. Denise, how are you?
I am fantastic, very nervous, but I'm excited.
Just so you know, I'm nervous as well.
Yeah.
But it's okay though. And one little interesting fact about Denise is that she is a rock star real estate agent. And that is, to me, a major accomplishment. So what are you doing, like 50 million in revenue?
No, in revenue. It's take home. I made 50 million last year.
Oh.
No, last year in sales I did about 8 million, almost 9.
Really?
Yeah.
So what do you see about that? About 50% of that?
No, that's like the amount of houses that I sold. That's not even close to take home, but
Wow.
Someday.
Well,
I'll be on Sell in New York or one of those shows.
Yeah, what is that?
I'm just kidding. That's not my vibe at all. I would never.
Yeah, what is the one? Selling Sunshine, I think it's
I don't
called?
know. I don't have time to watch TV ever. But yeah, I know there's a Las Vegas one. There's a California one.
Yeah. I mean that you have the talent and the personality to do it. Trust me.
I just don't look like a Barbie doll. And those have you ever watched those shows?
Yeah.
It is like a fashion show. They're wearing like $10,000 outfits and
Listen, everybody, they have handicapped Barbie dolls now.
That's true. Everybody's a Barbie doll.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
That's true.
I mean, but what you really mean is you don't look like a stereotypical
Yes.
Barbie doll, but it's okay. Who wants to be stereotypical?
No, not me.
I don't want a typical stereo.
And plus, I'm the kind of person, like, I think if I won the lottery, I still would shop at like thrift stores and garage sales and still buy the sales at the grocery store.
I feel the same way because it's kind of, you like what you like.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, I like this because it costs a lot of money.
Right.
But a lot of people are like that. I
just am not that. I get very uncomfortable when I'm around people who make a lot of money and flaunt it.
Yeah.
I can relate to pretty much anybody. I can have conversations with somebody who makes a ton of money, but when they start talking about like, oh, I spent $10,000 on this outfit, I'm like, why?
That's right.
Like, I spent maybe $12 for mine.
Yeah. See,
and guess what? We both have clothes on.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person that would have to spend $10,000 just to fit into the outfit. So, like, that's the thing.
Get those personal trainers and, yeah.
Yes. So you are officially on The Dirty Truth with Deante Young, of course.
I'm so honored.
Yeah. I got to let people know that the way that I met Denise was 4 years ago. And she really didn't have a pot to piss in, actually. No. And to the point now, she has so much pissing pots. It's
I'm full of pissy pots.
Right. It's so incredible.
No, you did. We met right when I started my real estate career. And when if you know anybody who is a real estate agent, it's, for the first year, it's paying and paying and paying and paying all these fees and you're not making much money. So
Yeah.
I met you in that window of time where I was just paying a ton of money and not making any.
Yeah, she was covered in dirt. Now she's covered in diamonds. It's okay. But listen, her personality was always phenomenal. She actually came to my very first book signing where I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
I did. It was great. It was a great event.
Yes. Well, I mean, it turned out great. But
it was your mom's mac and cheese that made it great. Let's be real.
Exactly. Trust me.
You could have held it in a garage somewhere and it would have been phenomenal. It was great.
I think my hips actually went to like a size 72 that day. So you're probably correct. It was her mac and cheese.
It was so good.
But so here's the thing. We talk about the dirty truth, and what that means is basically anything that you're afraid to talk about or you were embarrassed of, ashamed of, a person that you used to be that you're like, oh man, I hated that version of myself, anything people make fun of you of. The dirty truth is actually something that's quite noble. And I talk about turning your trash into treasure. And actually, my great friend Wayne Dawson said the other day that you have to go through trials because that's how you're able to tell folk how good God is.
Yeah. I believe it.
And I thought that was pretty spectacular. And
yeah.
So that's like a kind of a secondary definition of the dirty truth is going through your trials and your testimony. I'm very fascinated and very enamored with your story because you have such a witty way of telling it, like the worst possible stories. I mean, if you were like falling off a bridge, you would say, oh, so I fell off a bridge and I probably have brain damage, but you know.
So funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. We just kind of, growing up, like my family's motto was literally just laugh or cry, you know? So if you're in a situation where you're going to cry, just make jokes about it. Like we're the people that laugh at funerals and, you know, I don't know that it's a good thing, but it's helped because sometimes that is your only option to laugh or cry. So.
Yeah. And what's funny is that whenever I would cry when I was being made fun of, that people would just laugh. So they kind of did the other thing way.
They were laughing and crying.
Now we've had so many wonderful conversations leading up to this because for some reason I wanted to really prep for you. It's like if you're gonna go and hang out with somebody exclusive, you want to do prep work.
Yeah.
Like serious prep work. And
then we ended up doing like 2-hour interviews over the phone.
I know. I even have my little notes here, and it's so awesome. I feel like this is like priceless. And it says Denise details.
Oh.
And I just love it. But I do really want to specify to people that like she really is the real deal. Trust me, she is. I mean, everything wrapped up in one as far as awesomeness. If you ever could have like a Reese cup with a diamond ring, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, you know, because you know, like I said, personality is really an asset. It really is, and you definitely have that.
Thank
tremendously.
You.
Here it says that you were insecure as a child and you felt like your self-worth was someone else's decision. I think that's so powerful. Now, what do you mean by that? What was your childhood like that made you feel that way?
I think that a lot of people, especially now, if I'm being honest, I would not want to be a child or a teenager right now. You know, it was tough for us and we didn't have social media. You know, if we were getting bullied at school, you know, maybe you got in a fight about it, maybe not, but you went home and that was the end of it. You know, these kids, it never ends for them. And they could be bullied by kids from all over the world through social media. But even, you know, we were on welfare. We weren't like piss poor, right. But, you know, we didn't have a ton. We had hand-me-down clothes. All of my clothes came from my aunts, who are not much older than me. But, you know, it's hard, especially I went to a private school for 7th and 8th grade, you know, and those kids, that school is $32,000 a year. And there's me, who's there on like, you know, a discount and a grant and all kinds of things. And it's just, you know, I don't know how you would not be self-conscious. Right. Just constantly seeing other people who are better than you by society's version. Yeah. Obviously I have physical attributes as well that made things a little more difficult. And, you know, my last name was Berger. So I was very self-conscious as a child, and, you know, it kind of formed me into a people pleaser. And I'm not upset about it because I still like being a people pleaser to an extent. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely took it a little too far as a child, and even into my early 20s, I was making myself crazy just to make other people happy.
See, I can relate to that because when I was in school, of course, I had the childbearing hips and the girlish figure, and it was humiliating. People would make fun of me if I didn't have a haircut. I wore jogging pants all the time because I don't think they had jeans for porkers. You know, I mean, it was so humiliating. There's so many things that now is a real thing that would have helped me back then.
Right.
But, you know, one thing is it does create character.
It does.
Because what happens is if you don't go through those situations, you don't really know how to deal with it when you get older.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a badge of honor, like when they say the Purple Heart when you get it in war.
Yeah.
It's like it's something that's like you earn some level of courage.
I think that's honestly a huge problem that we have with society right now. Like, I know it's not what we're talking about, and I'm kind of jumping into this, but like when my kids were growing up, I mean, they're still growing up, but when my kids were little, if I played Candyland with them and I beat them, I would shove it in their face and I'd be like, I won. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I want my kids to understand what it's like to lose every once in a while. You know what I mean? I want them to understand that life is not going to be great to you all the time. Sure. Yes, you can find great things in it, but it's not going to be amazing all the time. And I think that over the generations, you know, our generation was kind of like ignored. You know, we were the latchkey kids. We didn't get a lot of attention. We didn't get that positive reinforcement all the time. And it kind of turned us into callous old people, you know, and so we overcompensated.
Yeah.
And so we raised these kids who get trophies for everything and gold stars for everything. And you're so smart and you're so beautiful and all this stuff. And then when they get out there into the real world, they're just lost because they don't know what it's like to lose ever, or to be told that they're not good enough, or to be told that maybe they're not amazing.
Yeah.
So I've always felt like those things do teach you to accept yourself and to not look for acceptance from other people. Like, I don't care if you tell me that I'm amazing. If I believe that I'm amazing, that's really all that matters. And so if you come here telling me that I'm not, then I'm just not going to believe you.
Right.
Instead of being so affected by it because I've never been told anything negative.
Exactly.
I think it's a huge problem in society, honestly.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you would have to look at it like you don't really necessarily need validation from people.
Right.
I used to always think I had to get the validation to realize I didn't need it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
And that's how I was most of my life, honestly. I just always felt like I was not worthy of anything unless somebody else told me that I was. And it was honestly probably not until I was 40 that I realized, like, hey, I am awesome, and other people's opinions of me does not concern me.
That's why it's good to not get too high or too low on it, because just like you said, to your point, if someone says that you are horrible or you're nothing, then you're going to believe that too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's good to say, oh, you think I'm awesome? Okay, well, that's fine.
Cool.
You know, don't get too high on it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like turning your trash into treasure, because now you can teach that to your kids.
Yeah.
And I love one thing you said, and I want you to explain this.
Okay.
Tears and tantrums don't build time machines.
That is my motto, and I say it all the time. I've shortened it for my kids because I say it so often that now they know if I just go tears and tantrums. And they'll be like, I know. I don't even know how I came up with this, but it was years and years ago. Tears and tantrums don't build time machines. So it doesn't matter how much we cry about things, how many walls we punch, how much anger we take out on other people. It doesn't matter how much we hold on to things. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to build a time machine. It's not going to go back and change anything. So all we can do is just deal with it the way it is.
I love that.
And it really does help a lot. And the other thing that I pair with it is literally a 5-minute timer. Did we talk about this on the phone?
I know you said you wanted to kind of expound on that, but you did tell me about something where you can just be ticked off for a while.
It is so simple and so profound. It started, my best friend and I, you know, in our 20s and 30s, we struggled a lot, like with money, with jobs, with all kinds of things. You know how it goes. When it rains, it pours.
Of course.
So we would call each other and we would say, I need 5 minutes. And okay, we would set a 5-minute timer. That's it, 5 minutes. And we would scream and we would cry and we would swear and we would do all these things. And then when the timer went off, you put on your big girl pants and you figured out a solution. That was it. Anything more than that is excessive. That's what we thought. Sure, absolutely have your feelings, be upset about things, swear about things, get angry, but then like be real about it, because it's not going to change anything if you sit there and do it for 20 minutes or 20 hours or 20 years. So we would set a timer for 5 minutes, and when the timer went off, that was it. Okay, cool. Your electric bill is going to get shut off on Friday. What do we do to fix it? Have you done this, this, and this? No. Okay, let's get started. And it got to a point where like even just the sound of the alarm going off was like a switch in your brain. And it's such a simple thing because it's just a timer, but you start to train yourself to where when you hear that timer go off, your brain's like, okay, it's go time. It's solution time. We're done with the crying. We're done with the anger. We're done with resentment, all those things. Mm-hmm. It's solution time.
So this right now, the version of you right now, you are the fully formed version, and you are the result of the person that you grew up as.
Yes.
Where you said that you suffered verbal and emotional abuse and things of that nature. So what exactly was the exact nature of those types of things? Because right now it really polished you into this person.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that it was an exact thing. There's not like a one moment in my life where I was just like, aha, this is what I'm going to be. But like we talked about on the phone, I feel like positivity was my only solution. And learning my self-worth was my only solution. There were very dark times where I thought that, I didn't want to be here anymore. But it just seems like being negative and being angry towards people and being hurtful towards people was just treating them the way I was treated, and I didn't want that. Yeah. And so positivity was my only option. It was a survival instinct that I had. I never wanted to be the cause of somebody else's pain. I never wanted somebody to cry over something that I had done to them. Yeah. I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to cry over something that somebody said to you or did to you. And I never, ever wanted to be that for somebody else.
So how were you able to just want things to be positive instead of just becoming more of the negativity that was coming to you?
I don't know. I honestly feel like it was my only choice. Yeah. I just feel like that was my survival. Like so we're going to stay. We're not going to do anything. I don't know what you're allowed to say, but you know what I mean. We're going to stick around, but we're not going to turn into that because I've seen the evil. I've seen, the negativity, and that's not what I want to be. And that's not who I am.
Just so you know, you're allowed to say anything.
Okay. Well, you know how they say, like, on TikTok, they'll say unalived because you can't, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't know. So I don't know what you're allowed to say, but.
And I will say one thing that I really like too. You also said that you don't heal your scars by giving other people scars.
Right. That's true.
And that's one of those things that obviously is kind of your operating system. Yeah. And so it obviously serves you well. And it's kind of your North Star as well, like your GPS. So.
Yeah. I can't even fathom the idea of being the cause of somebody else's pain. Even like I've never been in a fight before. The thought of punching someone and intentionally causing them physical harm is just, I can't. I don't think that okay, sure, mess with my kids. That's a different story. Mm-hmm. I'm scared to see what I would do in that situation, but I can't imagine ever doing that intentionally to somebody, physical or emotional. I can't imagine ever intentionally hurting somebody.
Well, what's really interesting is that, when you're going through childhood and you're going through school, the kids are always brutal and sometimes they can be very unforgiving. Yeah. And I know that you were just in a regular school until 7th grade, then you went to private school. What would you say is the biggest difference between private school and going to, the public school? Because it can be a very big difference.
It's night and day. Yeah. It is. I honestly wish that public schools could be modeled more after private schools, because I went to an all-girls school in 7th and 8th grade, and it was phenomenal. We didn't care what we wore to school. We didn't care if we wore the same clothes 4 days in a row. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody said anything if your hair wasn't brushed. There wasn't like a, well, I saw you talking to my boyfriend. You know, there was none of that. We just focused on school and we focused on building relationships, and it just was so different. And then to go in ninth grade is like your first year of high school. You know, that's like a big time for your emotional development and your growth as like turning into an adult. And during that time is when I went from that beautiful environment to public school, and not just any public school. I went to Menor, so it was like over 1,000 kids in my graduating class, you know, and all of a sudden, like, what do you mean I'm not supposed to care about my grades? What do you mean I'm supposed to care what that boy thinks about me? You know, like it was just a culture shock to me because I went from, you know, elementary school, you don't care about that kind of stuff anyways. Yeah. You know, and then so I go into this amazing learning environment, and then I'm just like shoved into ninth grade. It was just such a huge pivotal moment. And I was surrounded by totally different standards, and it was rough.
Yeah, well, ninth grade was a very pivotal time anyways, because number one, your grandfather died when you were 14. That's around the time you're ninth grade. You also were, you had a relationship with someone that you met from age 14, and you were with them from 14 to 23. So it sounds like ninth grade was a lot, because I know I was 14 when I was in ninth grade. So I really want to touch on the relationship with your grandfather, because you had a lot of really bad situations as far as the verbal and mental abuse and emotional abuse and things like that. But your grandfather was kind of like, you know, basically your knight in shining armor.
He was.
I know you said that he grew up in Cleveland, and he was friends with the Irish mafia. That sounds pretty cool, because I happen to like you know, a lot of the Irish whiskey. You know?
Perfect. You'd fit right in. Danny Green, I'm sure you've heard of him. My grandpa was friends with him.
Yeah. You said that at his funeral, so many people had great things to say about him. You wanted the same for yourself. So I think it's great, because at all points in time, you were courting positivity. Because just for you to even have the mentality of, man, I would like that, you know, for myself. So I probably should be a person that's worthy of that. As opposed to saying, I'm about to be a knucklehead because this is what the world did to me. It turned me into a monster. Right.
It's such a true statement. I'm sure you've seen, you know, the meme where it talks about the two brothers who watched their father, who was an alcoholic, and one of them looked at the father and said, I know I'm never going to be that. And so when people ask why he didn't drink, he said, I watched my father. And then his brother sees the same father, grows up in the same house, becomes an alcoholic, and when people say what happened, he says, I watched my father. It's the same view. It's just how you react to it that's different. And my grandpa's funeral was one of the worst days of my life.
Wow.
But it also was so beautiful to see all of the people there, and so many people had so many good things to say about him, and everybody was laughing and telling stories about him, and it was beautiful.
Well, you said that it was a defining moment because he was your best friend. And I think that's so incredible, because when you're 14, you know, 13, 12, 11, to have your grandfather.
Or I spent the night over there all the time. I mean, I wasn't ever like ashamed of it. You know, he was fun. He made me laugh. He, you know, would purposely buy things at the grocery store because he knew I liked them, and he wanted to make sure he had them when I came over. You know, I don't know. I thought it was normal. I guess other kids would be like going out to the movies or something. But
so if you can say one enduring quality that he had that basically made the biggest impact on your life going forward, and even now, what would you say it is?
He just loved people so hard, you know, and it wasn't always like hugs and kisses and, you know, that kind of affection. It was, you know, Stouffer's French bread pizza always in the freezer for me. You know what I mean? Like just his constant acts of love. He wasn't, I don't know how to describe it, but he wasn't like an affectionate person. He wasn't like, oh, come here, I love you so much, you know? But it was the acts of love. You never had to question it.
Yeah, he showed his affection in a different way.
Right.
And that's really more with his actions.
Yes.
Yeah, so
And that's huge to me.
And his influence.
Yeah.
I love that. You told me that being positive all the time is not easy.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of that has to come from what you suffered as a child, but also as an adult. So why is it not easy in your book?
I mean, if we're really looking at the way that people behave, it is very, very easy to be angry and to be bitter and to be upset and to use bad things that happen to you as an excuse to be a bad person. That's easy.
Yeah.
It is not easy to fight against that every single day and say, I am not going to become that. You know, it's something that you have to work at. And it's just like going to the gym, you know, it's something that you have to do every single day or you're not going to see the results from it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a reason it's called a cop-out when people, you know, just like, whatever, I'm just going to be a bad person because people were bad to me.
Yeah.
That's because that's the easy way out. It's hard to every single day say, I'm not going to let those things affect me. I'm not going to let them change me. I'm not going to be the person who makes other people feel bad. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
That's why people don't do it.
Yeah. And I know to that point, you also said that you in your life many times have had to stay positive just to not go to the dark side.
Yeah. It's, you know, people look at me and they're like, oh, must be nice to be happy all the time. Well, first of all, I'm not. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I call it a funk, and I will get in a funk and I will not take a shower for weeks because that is too much energy for me, you know, and it's very easy to fall into that. That's easy.
Yeah.
But it's harder to figure out a way to get yourself out of it and to be positive and to find reasons to get up off the couch and do things and do your dishes and do the things that you need to do. That's hard. It's very hard for me sometimes.
Well, I'll tell you what, I admire that self-awareness because you said you would go weeks without a shower. That really is a funk. That is a literal funk.
I go hard. No, it's definitely a funk.
You were also quoted as saying giving in is easy.
It is.
Okay, so when you say giving in, do you mean to people that are trying to peer pressure you in any way?
No, negativity. You know, just being dark and evil and mean and spiteful. All of those things are easy.
Yeah. I think that's pretty interesting. But speaking of things that are the opposite of negative, you did meet your soulmate.
I did.
And when you were actually very young, when you were what, 14?
14.
Yeah. And then you guys got married in 2009.
Yeah.
So I want you just to kind of like, love on him a little bit.
Okay. I do so much. I cannot even tell you how lucky I am. And I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and my marriage is no different. It's a perfect example of that. We actually lived 6 houses away from each other when I was 14. That pivotal moment when I was coming into, having to pay attention to boys and to what I was wearing and what my makeup looked like and all that stuff. I met him and he lived 6 houses away and we were best friends.
Wow.
There was never any we weren't trying to be romantic. We never even thought about dating each other. We just hung out every day. We knew everything about each other. We played 007 on the Nintendo 64. That was us. We walked to school together. We were best friends. We each dated other people, and just when we were in our 20s, refound each other after we had both been through some pretty bad relationships. And we started dating, and he asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to get married. Then I want to buy a house. Then I want to have kids. And he said, okay. So we got married in 2009. We bought our house in 2010, and we started having kids in 2011. He gave me everything that I wanted.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
But if we had tried to date in our teen years, in our early 20s, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
We both needed to see what bad relationships were so that we could appreciate a good relationship,
Yeah.
you know, and our relationship isn't like, for example, he doesn't get me roses all the time. But you know what? I never use a snow brush, ever. I wake up and go out to my car in the morning and he brushed it off when he was on his way to work. You know, he doesn't we don't do romantic dates, but if I'm like, oh my gosh, my car is making this weird noise, he looks at it and fixes it, and I don't even have to ask him. You know what I mean? It's the acts of love.
Phenomenal relationship, and that I am uniquely qualified in this moment in time to really understand more because I just obviously got married, as you guys can see.
Sorry, ladies, he's taken.
Yeah, I am officially taken. I am officially a product of the blonde bombshell, Billy Badass, the co-host.
She's amazing.
Yeah, shout out to Mrs. Young. Yeah. And so I definitely understand having that wonderful, awesome best friend relationship, and having this person that just goes above and beyond the bounds of anything. And it's crazy because people talk about, well, marriage is hard, it's hard, it's hard. And I'm like, I always felt that way from what I've seen, but I'm like, wait a minute, is it really more that there are challenging moments?
Yes.
Depending on who it is. Now, sometimes it can be a complete nightmare.
And if you're not in it with the right person and you don't have like a partner attitude, then I could see how it could be hard. My husband and I have been through some stuff.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot, but we've been through it together.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people don't have the marriage is easy. It's because they're in it with the wrong person.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing hard about my marriage. We've been through hard things, but we've done them together as a team. It was always us versus the problem, not like the problem, him versus me.
I love that.
Yeah, it's us versus the problem.
See, that distinction means everything.
It does.
And I like how you also said it's not necessarily a bad marriage, it's like the wrong person.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so it's just like if I was to get into like a Prius, I can say, man, cars suck, but it's like, no, that's because I'm in the wrong car.
You're in the wrong car.
As you can see, Doritos have funded my figure. Doritos is the official.
Shout out to Doritos.
Yeah, they are the official sponsor of my girlish figure. So I love that.
Yeah.
That's so powerful, and it's
my marriage is the easiest part of my life.
Yeah.
At any given moment, it doesn't matter what I'm going through. Unfortunately, though, I feel like I neglect my husband sometimes.
Yikes.
Just because he is so easy, and what we have is so easy, and it doesn't take work. So sometimes I don't put the work into it. I'm not going to lie. I'm so focused on being a real estate agent and being a mom and being a volunteer and doing all these other things. And he's like my safe place. So I know that I don't have to put energy into it. And so sometimes it does. It does.
Yeah. And I know that first of all, one of the things that I've come to realize is a superpower is having great self-awareness.
Yeah.
And now, do you ever tell your husband what you just said?
Yes.
Do you ever say, hey, I'm neglecting you?
Yeah.
And what does he say?
He's always like, oh my gosh, stop it. I don't need anything. He doesn't need anything, but that's not the point, And I tell him all the time how much I appreciate him. And, other women will complain about their husbands. And I'm always like, can't relate. I have zero issues with him. He is phenomenal. He cooks, he cleans. He is so hands-on with the kids. It's not like, oh, he has to babysit. You know how some guys are like, oh, I have to babysit my kid. What? Yeah. He's raising those kids. They're his kids.
I hate it when fathers say,
right.
I gotta watch my kid. No, you don't have to watch them, or babysit them. Yeah. You're hanging out with your kids.
Right. And I go on I go on trips. We kind of do things separately just because that's where we're at in our lives. We can't afford to go on big family vacations all the time. So he goes and does his thing. He goes to the cabin with the guys. I go and do ghost hunts and then we'll do a family vacation together. But there's no sense in us being stuck at home just because we don't have somebody to watch the kids for a week while we go on vacation, So we just kind of do our own things. I forget where I was going with this, but
the good news is that you have this enthusiasm and you're 16 years in.
Yeah.
That means everything in the world.
Yeah.
And that just means that the rest of the world is doing it wrong.
Yeah. I think
Seriously.
so. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not one to be like, oh, I'm doing it right, but I know for sure in our marriage we're doing it right. We appreciate each other. You know, we do what we can for each other, and we also recognize when we can't do things for each other.
Yeah.
You know, we know that our time is going to be when the kids move out and we have the house to ourselves and we're retired and we can do all that stuff together. But we understand that that's not right now.
Yeah.
We have a lot of things going on. So
Yeah.
neither one of us gets mad about like, oh, well, you're not spending time with me. Like, we both know we have a lot going on. And if we get to go to dinner or we get to do something together, then cool. But nobody expects it. And so we don't get mad about it.
Yeah, and compare and contrast this to past relationships that not only that you've been in, but as a child when you saw growing up, you probably didn't see too many good relationships.
No.
I know I didn't.
No.
You know, so
No.
to me, I feel like marriage, I would rather backflip out of a 25-story window than to marry someone.
Yeah.
But then, you know, my wife, she made herself undeniable, and she, to this day, I still can't tell you exactly what it is. But so contrast this with
That says a lot, though.
Yeah.
Because like I was engaged for years before, and I never once planned a wedding. Never once. I think a week into dating my husband, I already had my bridal party picked out. You know, like I knew that I wanted to marry him.
Yeah.
Actually, I know it sounds super cheesy, but the first time I kissed him, I knew I was going to marry him.
Wow.
Because it was like a movie. It was just like sparks, and you know, it was super cheesy. I know, but
That's awesome.
it just is a huge thing, and I think that, you know, both of us came from divorced parents. You know, both of us had seen bad relationships, and we decided when we got married, this is it. There is no divorce for us. You know, this I'm not doing this just for fun. I'm doing this for life.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about it, and we both decided there is no divorce.
Yeah, so you had a lot of conflicts that you saw as a child with other people.
Yeah.
You're
I
like,
mean,
wait.
my mom was married 3 times.
Wow.
You know, so it was like, you know, and it wasn't, she never told me like, oh, do things, whatever. I don't know. It was just like taught to me that you should have a separate bank account that your husband doesn't know about so that when you leave, you're not stuck with no money. You know what I mean? Like, that was not it for me. That was not what I wanted. I never wanted that type of marriage. And actually, my husband has been on my bank account since like a month of us dating.
Wow.
So
Holy smokes.
we have a shared account. I'm not hiding anything from him. It does make things difficult when you're trying to plan like a surprise party or something, because then he's like, what's this charge?
Yeah.
But I've never felt that I should have a separate bank account, that I should have a backup plan. That man is my backup plan.
Wow.
He is all of my plans.
And to your point, when we talked about how when I first met you, you were like down in the dumps, and he was basically your advocate. You know, he was your bankroller. He was your financier.
Yeah, there's no way I could have done it. I understand why real estate agents drop out in their first year if they don't have a Richie. They're not making it.
Yeah.
It's not only he was there, you know, to take care of the kids and the house and all of that while I was just running around doing showings, doing trainings, doing everything that I could to get myself where I needed to be. But he also was, you know, still working and just footing the bill for everything because I wasn't making money. So
Wow. Do you still have bouts now where you feel less than about yourself or about your life?
100%. 100%.
And so how do you manage that?
I cry like a baby. No, I did. I mean, I just last week had somebody who I'm working with, which I can't say too much because I don't want to get in trouble for it, but I had somebody that I'm working with forgot that they were on a group text and mentioned my mole. And it was like a switch in my brain that was like, hey, remember, you're ugly. And that was it. And I lost it. And I cried for like 5 minutes. And, you know, my husband's like, that's ridiculous. Like, first of all, it didn't just appear. Like, why are you all of a sudden getting upset about it? But I do. I mean, I'm a person. I'm a human being.
Well, you know what? That brings me to something very profound that you said when you said you don't criticize someone for something they can't change in 10 seconds.
Yes. And I will admit, hopefully it's in your notes, that I did see a TikTok on this. And I thought that it was just great advice. And I teach it to my kids. If somebody can't change something in 10 seconds, don't tell them about it. Don't criticize them for it. Like, yes, I have a mole on my face. Do we need to talk about that? Do you need to point that out to me? Is that going to be helpful if you point that out to me? No. But if I have a booger in my nose or my fly is down, you should absolutely tell me, because that's something I could change in 10 seconds.
You hear that, guys? I can't do 500,000 jumping jacks in the next 10 seconds, okay? So either love me and all of my very curvaceous... Listen, I have a nice figure. The figure just happens to be a well-rounded
I'm an oval.
figure.
I'm a potato.
Yeah. I have a great shape. The shape just happens to be a large circle, okay? Well, I can't change that in the next 10 seconds, okay? So, anyways.
It's not helpful. I tell my kids to say nice things or say nothing. It's just an old adage, but I twisted it a little bit. But, unless what you're saying is going to help somebody, don't say it. It's not going to help somebody to point out that I am overweight. Thank you, Karen. That's...
You know what? That just might be the title of this episode. Say nice things or say nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of sums it up.
I like it.
It really does.
And, I like it.
I mean, it's tremendous. I just think that everything that you've experienced in your life to this point is here to serve you. And it's like all those things, going through that stuff, dealing with the loss of your grandfather, suffering emotional abuse and all of that type of thing. All of those things are your dirty truth. The bad relationships you saw, and even the things you deal with now, and saying, oh, it's a reaffirmation that, oh, you're ugly. You have managed to turn the trash into treasure by using that effectively, not only for your children and their upbringing, but also you as a person and as an asset and as a resource to your friends, family, associates, clients, anybody. You come off that way because you've been through the fire, the proverbial fire.
Yeah.
So that is what I want to applaud and salute you for, because you have managed to flip the script, literally flip the script and turn it into something that serves you rather than stomps on you.
And everybody has that ability.
Yeah.
Everybody has that ability, and it is all about your mindset. You just have to look at things not as, why am I going through this, but what can I learn from this? And even if the lesson is just like, I don't want to be like that person, that is still a very good lesson. And if you are sitting there thinking that you know everything, you're doing life wrong. You should constantly be learning from things. And that's just what I did. I took everything in my life and used it as a lesson about what I wanted to do. And a lot of the lessons I learned was, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to have that personality trait. But it's still a lesson.
Yeah. And you're so good with learning how to kind of manage all the things that could be a demon that could take you down. You're so good at that. A lot of people, they use drugs and things like that to regulate their mood. But like, for example, one thing you said, you refuse to drink when you're in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And I almost don't even have to ask what that means, because, I mean, look, maybe you turn into O.J. Simpson. I don't know.
But I want to explain it. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I come from a family of alcoholics. It's not a secret. We will talk about it at family meetings or at family reunions or whatever. But I come from a family of alcoholics, and, even at a very young age, I recognized that people were using bad things that happened as an excuse to drink. And so, sure, maybe you got fired from your job, and that's worth having a couple of drinks and drowning your sorrows. But then it turns into you psychologically finding reasons to hate your life or to want to drink. And so then it turns into, oh, I broke a nail. That's it. I'm getting drunk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I have refused to even allow that process to start, because it starts very small. It starts with, a legitimate reason to drink, right? You lost your job, you broke up with somebody, whatever. So if I'm in a bad mood, whether I'm anxious, angry, whatever, upset, I will not drink, because alcohol it makes me extra, whatever it is, extra angry, extra happy, extra loving, extra anxious. So I will only drink if I'm in a mood that I would like to enhance.
Wow.
that makes sense.
Wow. So now I have to throw away a few of my bottles then because
I have a lot of bottles at home that are just, a client will give them to me or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, well,
Yeah. You also stress the importance of healthy relationships. And I'm sure that that's because you've seen both sides of the coin.
I have.
So I would obviously implore people to really, really focus on trying to get all of your relationships together,
Yes.
even, mother, daughter, father, son,
Yep.
things like that. Now, what would you say is your number one skill for maintaining a healthy relationship?
I think self-awareness.
Yep. The number one thing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I think that a lot of relationships fail because people are not self-aware, and in their own faults. And I am super open about my mental health. Obviously, I'm here. I will talk to my kids about it. I will tell them, like, listen, I'm very overstimulated today and I'm going to get angry. And it's not at you. It's just too many noises. And they totally understand it. They're like, okay. And they will be quiet. I'm not screaming at them. I'm not telling them to shut the F up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just being honest with them. Like, hey, it's not your fault. It's my fault. I'm overstimulated. So that's a huge thing where I could have traumatized my kids by screaming at them and telling them to shut up and to go to their rooms and all this other stuff. But it was because I was overstimulated. It had nothing to do with them. So I'm very open about my mental health all the time. I will tell my husband, I'm going to be sad and there's nothing you could do about it. I'm just going through it right now. And, he will talk me down off a ledge in whatever way he can. But I think that being self-aware is huge. A lot of times people will get mad about something that somebody does. Oh, well, they didn't call me. Well, why am I getting upset about that? They, maybe they have stuff going on in their lives. Why am I making it all about me? So if I were to recognize like, oh my gosh, I just made that all about me. It has nothing to do with me. Then I just saved an argument with that person, or like how you just hold a grudge for no reason.
Yeah.
When if you were just self-aware and recognized that you were being ridiculous, then it would stop a fight.
So you suffer from different types of mental health conditions.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What do you suffer from?
I do have ADHD. I got diagnosed when I was in my late 20s. My doctor told me that it's one of the highest test results she's seen in an undiagnosed adult.
Wow.
And of course I said, do I get a trophy for that?
Wow.
ADHD is something that is not diagnosed in girls very often because it doesn't come across as the hyperactive part. Our brains are hyperactive, not our bodies. So it comes across as being a people pleaser and having a ton of hobbies and playing a ton of sports and things like that. So people just assume, oh, she's fine. She's just an overachiever. No, she's not. Her brain's been going off.
Okay, so you're talking about mental health, and you said that you have all of these different issues.
Yeah.
A lot of times, when you're kids, people say, oh man, you're stupid, or,
Yeah.
You're crazy, and they go like this and all that kind of stuff, and oh, you're a retard and all that kind of stuff. But mental health is really a serious issue because there are so many people that have like a mild version, an intermediate version, and then there's other people that are like suicidal.
Right.
And I'm sure you probably know people of all walks of life. Have you ever, I know earlier you said that you didn't want to be here, but have you ever truly been suicidal?
To what I thought was, I have sat in my kitchen with a knife,
Oh man.
when I was a teenager and just wanted to, but luckily I have a low pain tolerance and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
When I said I don't want to put physical harm on anybody, apparently that includes myself. Thank God. Yeah. I think that mental health is something that absolutely should be talked about. We should talk about it just like we talk about having a cold or flu.
Yeah.
Especially guys. And I am raising 3 boys, and I want them to understand that there is nothing wrong with them if they feel sad or if they feel anxious or any of those things. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so open with my mental health, is because I want them to see me and say, it's okay. Yeah. She told me it's okay. Yeah. She told me I'm allowed to have these feelings, these big feelings, I call them. I think that boys and men are so you're not allowed to cry. What are you, a girl? There's so many things that are told to them, and it's so disgusting. Yeah. It's such a double standard. Why am I encouraged to have a me day and to go get an iced coffee and go get a pedicure, but guys aren't allowed to go fishing or go golfing? It's just such a double standard. And another thing that I'm doing my little tiny part to, at least raise my boys to understand that it's okay. You're going to have days where you're sad and you don't know why. That's a funk. That's what I call it. You're going to be in a funk sometimes and you're not going to know why, but here are some tools to get out of it, and if you need to talk about it, go to therapy. That's what those people are there for. They are not going to judge you. They've seen worse than you, but it's important to talk about it, because holding on to it, that gets you in trouble.
And that's why I hate toxic masculinity.
Yes.
Because, to your point, especially guys need to really come forward with that. But you know how it is with, oh, you're punk, you're, all that kind of stuff. And I always say that the strongest thing you can do is to show what's perceived as vulnerability in public. That's the strongest thing, because a lot of times people think they have to be tough. I remember I was doing an interview after I did the Fuck Your Insecurities book, and I was talking to this guy who's a successful businessman, and I said, what are your insecurities? He says, I'm not insecure. And I was just like, really? So I'm thinking to myself, oh, he's one of those people. So I rephrased it like probably 3 minutes later. And I said, so have you ever doubted yourself? He says, oh, all the time, all the time. And so that's how I knew that he was actually a victim of toxic masculinity, probably in his upbringing. And I think it's sickening when people try to put on a face and say, yeah, I'm a guy and this and that, and I'm tough.
And it's also hypocritical, because one of the things that you can do to help somebody more than anything is to show them that they're not alone, and to show them that there's ways to work around things. So to me, absolute strength is for a man to say, wow, I'm really struggling, but here's how I got out of it. Would you like me to help you?
Yeah.
Because if you want to be tough and you want to be the man and to help people and to change their lives, that's a huge way to do it.
Yes. And speaking of someone that I know you told me about, this customer, Jimmy. It sounded
like Jimmy.
It sounded like he was on some toxic masculinity. Too.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, because that you actually have a nice little lesson that came out of that.
So I worked at a gas station. It was beer spot, whatever. And I had a lot of regular customers, and one of them was Jimmy. And he would come in. If he had a bad day, everybody knew about it, because he was slamming things down and he was just being so rude to people and giving them attitudes because he had a bad day at work. And one day he came in, stomping his feet, whatever, and I was just being super nice to him. And he said, you don't have to smile all the time. And I said, Jimmy, it takes the same amount of energy to smile as it does to do whatever it is you're doing right now. And he said, oh, it must be nice to have nothing go wrong in your life and just to be happy all the time. And I said, Jimmy, my house is in foreclosure right now. And his face just dropped. He stopped talking. And he was like, what? And I said, yeah, Jimmy, my house is in foreclosure right now. I don't know how I'm going to pay it. I said, is that your fault? Is that any of the other customers' fault? Is that, the store's fault? No, it's nobody's fault. So why am I going to take that out on you when you had nothing to do with it?
Yeah.
And he was a regular. I mean, he would be in there 2-3 times a day, but he didn't come in for days. And when he did finally come in, he said, I've really been thinking about what you said, and you're absolutely right. And I'm like, yeah, of course I'm right.
Wow.
You have no reason. The things that are going wrong in your life are nobody else's fault other than the people who did them to you. So why do you take things out on other people?
That's so powerful. Especially, it's even more powerful, more profound, because you said to me, literally, you said that you're good at being broke.
I am.
And so by you being so good at being broke, that allowed you to kind of be desensitized to the fact that your house was going into foreclosure. Now, of course, I'm sure you were concerned, but you were able to not wear it on your sleeve when you were in the public.
And it's crazy because, for somebody who has anxiety and stresses about like literally everything, I don't stress about like money and whether or not things are going to work out, because I just know that they will.
Yeah.
And it's probably pretty toxic.
Yeah.
Because I should be like stressing about it and I should be doing what I can. But I just have always had faith that things will work out, and they do. So
yeah, well, that's the beauty of our life experiences, is that there's something in our life experiences, in our history, on our journey, that prepared us for whatever we're going through going forward.
Right.
Whether it was in our personal life or someone else that we knew and we was kind of alongside it.
I totally agree.
You know, you can always look back, and that's why I always say the 3 relationships you have to have maintain are with God, number 1, with yourself, number 2, and then with your former self, number 3.
Yeah.
Because that is where all the answers are. It's like, you know, in school where they had an answer key. Well, that's your answer key.
Yeah.
So that's what I
yeah,
really believe.
that's super profound.
Yeah. And I do want to also ask you, if you could have any energy around you, what would it be?
Like any kind of people?
Any kind of, you know, people with a certain type of energy, what would it be?
I love, do you know what I love? People who do LARPing.
LARPing?
Yeah. You know what that is? Live action role play.
Live action role play.
Yeah.
LARPing.
Look it up. It's the people who go to like medieval fairs and they dress in their like knight's costume and they talk like they're from medieval times and whatever. Like, I love those people. I'm not going to lie. You know why? Because they love what they love. They don't apologize for it. Same thing with people who dance in the stands at stadiums and stuff. They know they're on the Jumbotron looking like an idiot. They don't care. You know, it's the people who just want you to be happy, and whatever you're doing to make yourself happy, they don't care as long as you're happy. You know, I just want people who are encouraging and just want positivity.
That's so awesome.
LARPing, look into
that.
it.
I love that. I kind of want to close on this. We have to talk about. I'm pretty sure you must know what I'm going to bring up.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to bring up your little peanut.
Oh.
So Denise has a 21-year-old son
Yes.
who is doing extraordinarily magnificent
Yes.
in life.
He's amazing.
And he, as you can see by the apples in her eye,
Yeah.
he's the apple of her eye. But I love the fact that you know how things happened at his inception
Yes.
and what he is now. So talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so I was in a not fantastic relationship. There wasn't like physical abuse or anything, but it was not good for either one of us. Very toxic. And I was engaged and I got pregnant. And when I was about 5 or 6 weeks pregnant, I started bleeding. And the doctor told me to come in right away. And I cried. And I cried and I cried in the bathroom and I said, God, I need this baby. Let me try not to cry. I said, God, I need this baby. Please don't take it from me. I said him because I knew. But I thought at the time that I needed that baby because I needed to fix a relationship that was broken. Really, I needed that baby for me. He is my everything. So I went to the doctor. And they did an internal ultrasound and they said, there's nothing there. They said, you know, it happens all the time. Most women don't even know they're pregnant at this point. You know, the baby probably just didn't develop. And I was devastated. And even my grandma called me. That was the only time she's ever cried in front of me. Even after my grandpa died, she didn't cry in front of me, but she cried in her message and she said, I'm so sorry. And I went, you know, they said, we're going to take some blood work. I want you to come back in a week. If your blood work doesn't go down, then we're going to need to do a DNC to get rid of the baby. So I said, okay. So, you know, I was 20 years old. I went camping and I fully intended on just getting obliterated, just drinking. I didn't care. I was so upset. And I got there, I got to the campgrounds and I just couldn't do it. And I said, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I shouldn't be drinking. And of course, you know, my ex is, all right, fine, well, I will, you know. So we spent a weekend, it was 4th of July weekend out there, and I never had a drink, and I just couldn't get over it. And I went to the doctor, and they ran my blood work, and they said, your numbers are actually going up. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, we're not sure, but we're going to do another ultrasound. And so they did another ultrasound, and there was my little peanut. He just looked like a little peanut on the screen with a heartbeat.
Wow.
And so from that moment, he was my little peanut. And I was so happy. I know 20 years old, you're a baby at that point, you know, but I had known my whole life that I wanted to be a mom. So I was just over the moon excited. And then when he was born, he was very sick and we didn't know why. We ran so many tests. They did a spinal tap. They actually had told me that they thought he had meningitis and that he wasn't going to make it. And it'll probably only be a couple of days. So here I am, 20 years old. I already lost this baby once, lost him. And then now he's born and he's here and I couldn't even hold him. They took him away from me immediately. And they're telling me he's not going to make it. Again, they're telling me he's not going to make it. It turned out he had something called chorioamnionitis. Happens to less than 2% of moms and their babies. That's how we are. We're phenomenal, that less than 2%. And he spent 7 days on IV antibiotics. And by the time he left the hospital at 9 days old, he was already drinking 8 ounces at a time. He was just thriving. And he is still my little peanut. You can look in my phone right now. That's still what his name is in my phone.
That is so adorable.
I love him so much. I'm so proud of him.
I love the fact that you said he makes me look so good as a mom.
He does.
You know, yeah, I do want to tell you that this has been such a joy. I knew it. I knew it was going to be a joy the minute that we were talking about all this stuff.
We always have a good time talking, though.
Yeah, you are just a beacon. You really should launch your podcast.
I do. I did have a podcast for a while. Where I just talked about me and the things I've learned and the things I've been through. And it really resonated with people, but it just kind of fell off.
Wow.
And I would eventually like to write a book. Maybe I could talk to you about that.
Oh, yeah. I'm all for it.
You know a guy.
I know a few, but yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to do that because your message deserves to be out there.
I've always wanted to help people. I've seen what it's like to go through things alone and to feel like you're alone. So my goal has always just been to let people know that they're not alone in whatever they're feeling, whatever they're going through. So I would like to get that message out to people. Yeah,
well, you're such a resource and we definitely appreciate you.
Maybe you'll see me back sometime.
You should be. I'm telling you, what we're gonna do, guys. We're gonna make her a guest host sometime because you have a lot of value to give and very sage, and you have really, really made the most of your dirty truth.
Yeah.
And I really want to appreciate you always and forever.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for showing up. I mean, you're doing me a great favor, and to our followers and viewers and all of our supporters and subscribers, you are a beacon for all of us, including me.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, you can't do it without them, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, you could post videos all you want, but it doesn't mean anything unless people are watching. So
yikes.
We definitely appreciate you guys.
Yes. Was Denise a rock star or what? I told you guys, her dirty truth benefits all of us. We love her mentality, her disposition, and most of all, her courage. And guys, make sure that you always remember to embrace your dirty truth.